Yeah, welcome to Sweetwater. Thanks for joining us. We had a historic week this week, a consequential week this week, and I know that there's a lot of feelings and a lot of reaction and reflection going on. I'm not going to talk too much about elections or policies or politics or anything like that. Um, This is an all-inclusive space, and all ideologies and all karmas are welcome here. Um, but I did think it kind of brought up some things that might be interesting to talk about. Um, I woke up on Wednesday feeling pretty good. And, regardless of where my politics may lie or whether I was, satisfied or not with the results, Um, I woke up feeling good, which was honestly slightly ironic, um, unexpected. And so I was looking at that, like, why? Why would I feel good today? Just generally. Um, I thought maybe it was because there was so much clarity in what we got from Tuesday. Um, but I wasn't quite sure. And then I saw this article by Eve Marco. Eve Marco is a Zen teacher in our lineage, and she was Bernie Glassman's wife, his second or third wife, actually, his last wife, I guess we could say. And she's very active in the Zen Peacemakers. She's been teaching for a very long time. And so she wrote an article on Wednesday or Thursday and sent it out to a bunch of people in our kind of Zen Buddhist sphere, and it kind of acknowledged this good feeling because she says that she surprisingly also felt good the next day. And so she says, I feel good. I feel good. And it was true. I double checked. And yes, I was feeling good. How the heck is that possible? And then she looks at it and she says, um, wow, look at how much I didn't know. Look at how much I still don't know, which means I have a lot to learn, lots to unveil, lots of rocks to move away, mostly my own conditioning, rocks to peer under, lots of challenges to my understanding and my basic assumptions. And I can't help it, learning new things cheers me up. And that just resonated with me so hard that what I was feeling wasn't necessarily like happiness about the results per se, um, but a kind of joy or cheeriness or positivity around learning something, getting new information. And it really makes me think of what it was like when I was in school. And even though we all hate school and school sucks, um, putting new information into the brain hole just kind of feels good. Doing homework doesn't feel good, but like realizing that I can do this and turn a decimal into a fraction and a fraction into a decimal, like just having that knowledge go into the brain, that neuron being formed or synapse or whatever, just kind of feels good. And so I kind of recognized that as the good feeling that I was having. Um, and so I guess the reason why, election and, the fallout from it notwithstanding, I just think it's so important to talk about that because despite the fact, I mean, does raise your hand if you like feel me that like learning something feels good, right? Even if it's something you don't want to learn, you don't want it to be the fact. And so I just find it so amazing that, like, even though we all know how good it feels to learn something, we fight to be right so hard. We deny ourselves the pleasure of learning something so that we can prove to ourselves and others that we're right. Maybe not all the time, but it makes me think, like, think about all the conversations you've had, right? Maybe you're having a debate with someone, or you're having a discussion about a kind of tricky issue, and you present a fact or a piece of information or an anecdote or something, and the person goes, yeah, but anyway, you can see that moment where you really did introduce a new piece of information that kind of calls into question what they were thinking. And maybe you've been on the other side where someone gives you a fact that goes against what you believe, and you have that moment of like, but I'm going to fight it anyway because that's actually disregarding this kind of thing. And I just, like, I don't know. I've personally been committed to the practice of having my mind changed for a while. Like, I love that practice. The feeling of having my mind changed is like, it just feels good. It just feels good. And it doesn't feel good to know I was wrong. And it doesn't feel good that the other person is going to walk away thinking they won, and whoever else was there is going to see me as the stupid person or whatever they want to think. But who cares what people think? The fact is, I got the pleasure of having my mind changed. And man, I just really wanted to encourage us all to just invite that energy, allow yourself to feel the joy of having your mind changed, even if it means a complete 180 from what you've believed your entire life. Um, that's probably not going to happen, right? That's a rare thing that someone literally flips you around. But I just encourage us all to be open to that joy of being wrong. Be a loser. Be a loser. It's so counter to what we want. Our safety is dependent on us knowing how the world works. And Buddhism is so clear that that's why we suffer. We hold on to these ideas. We hold on to these identities. We grasp at what we think the world is and how it should be. And if we don't, then we're losers. We were wrong. And that hurts. It's painful to be wrong, to lose a debate. But in the end, who cares? Be a loser. One of my favorite quotes, I think it's from Maizumi Roshi, but it may be from somewhere else, but sometimes be like the earth and let everyone walk all over you. Be a support system. Be a giver. Be a loser. Be the bad guy. The only thing that makes that painful is our little self, our little ego that needs to be right, that needs to be seen as smart. But man, when I open up to being wrong and have my mind changed, it's just the best. Like, the example I was thinking of is, like, I firmly believe that In-N-Out is the best hamburger. And if someone came to me and said, yo, you need to try blah, 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 Johnny's or whatever, and I dig in and I say, no, 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 my friend. Nothing is as good as In-N-Out. I'm not going to drive to El Cajon to your Johnny's. Um, just imagine if I opened up. I said, well, maybe I'm wrong. And I go to Johnny's. And what if, in fact, Johnny's is actually better? It's impossible because In-N-Out is the best. But let's just say that Johnny's actually is better. Then my ability to admit I was wrong has now introduced something into my life that was even better than the thing that I thought was the best thing ever. So I know that's kind of a petty example, but I think a lot of the hatred and vitriol and division and frustration and disillusionment that we experience around things like politics, like relationship, like community, like career, stems from this kind of seemingly innate need to dig into how I'm right. And if this election has any silver lining or positive fallout, I think it might be that we open up to each other and we ask each other about things and are willing to be wrong. I am just waiting for a candidate on any side from any party to openly say in an interview or a debate, yeah, I was really wrong about that. And I looked at these facts and I looked at those circumstances and I listened to these people and I realized I was wrong. I'm just dying for a leader that can have the bravery to do that. And we just don't have it yet. So we have to be that change, right? That's like a grassroots thing. If the voters show that they respond positively to honesty and openness, then we'll have leaders who are honest and open. I don't know, just a thought. I could be crazy. So in this article, Eve goes on to say, learning and understanding new things almost always cheers me up, like we said. Uh, this election, Bernie's words came to me in big electric lights. Bernie was her husband. He was like one of the first American Zen masters. He is our founder's teacher. So he's very much like related to our center here. So she says that his words came to me in big electric lights. And the words are, include as many different people as possible in your mandala of practice, because those you exclude will sabotage you and your work. Include as many different people as possible in the mandala of your practice, because those you exclude will sabotage you and your work. So just quickly, the mandala of practice, kind of what he's talking about there, that's kind of like jargon, Buddhist jargon. So the mandala in Buddhist terms is basically the categorizing all the different parts of our life, right? So the Buddhist mandala is practice and awakening, it's wisdom, it's social action, it's relationships, and it's like work and generosity, right? So all of these things are our practice, right? Meditation is like the core of what we do in Zen, but working together, living together, being in relationship together, being giving, being of service, um, and taking action. All of these things are our practice. That's why it's so important, just like so many of our new people said, I've been sitting by myself, but I really wanted to sit in community. Because just being in community um, brings stuff up. Soon you'll, notice that that person over there is always breathing so loudly. Why do they breathe so loudly? Why do they always walk with this arrogance about that? We just, there's all these little things about community that just sticks in our craw, and those are our points of practice. That's where we get to open up to what's going on there. What is this suffering? What is this self? What is this judgment? So that's the mandala of practice. It's your life, the practice of your everyday life. So include as many different people as possible in your life practice. because those you exclude will sabotage you and your work. Man, that is so powerful. I never really think about that. Like how much sabotage when people like do you dirty or talk behind your back or try to diminish your accomplishments. How much of that is because you didn't include them? I know I feel that way. That's happened to me so much where like I know some kind of project or some kind of party is going on and I'm not invited. And so I'm sitting here and I'm talking to my friend and I'm like, man, these cats over there, they're doing, but they don't really know. They're just doing it because blah, blah, blah. And it's all just ego and blah, blah, blah. And then they text me and they're like, hey, we're having another meeting. You want to come? And I'm like, yes, please. And I go and I'm like, oh man, these guys are awesome. I'm so glad to be a part of this. And I'm going to go recruit new volunteers. So I know that I'm guilty of that. And I really think that that certainly happens in elective politics. You know, I don't feel included by the language of this candidate or this party or whatever. And this time, I think it resulted in a lot of people not voting, not necessarily switching sides, but maybe, but also just not voting, which is sabotage. So, yeah, if you have an initiative or a community that is all about environmental awareness, what would happen if you included an oil company manager? What would that mean? Or if you, well, I think we get the point. It's hard to think of examples, but, and of course there's boundaries, right? If I am going to start a social justice group, I probably wouldn't include a radical white supremacist. I probably wouldn't. I don't, I think that would be actively um, counterproductive. And that would sabotage the work. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe not. Um, but yeah, I think one lesson that I've learned in the last week is how do we really, really include people? Like here at the Zen Center, um, I've been going to White Plum Zen Centers for almost 25 years. And pretty much in every single one, every single person, even though we're like a religious community and we can't be partisan, it's pretty much assumed that everyone is on one particular side. And I'm really seeing that that is not always right. And that we need to create spaces like where we make these little like jabs and things that, you know, this or that candidate like under the radar being like slick about it. But I'm seeing that's not cool. Everyone should be included here, no matter what your ideological or religious or political views. Everyone should not only be welcome, but like supported and encouraged here and listened to and empowered. That's how we come together. That's how we change our minds. That's how we change other people's minds. And it's so hard to do. So hard to do. So I guess the only other thing I wanted to talk about um, was inspired from the work we're doing on Sason's book. Okay, so our founder, her name is Sason Saunders. She's been a teacher in our lineage for 20, 30 years or something. And she's about to retire and go live with bears in Alaska or whatever she's going to do. Um, and so, as part of her retirement, we are putting together a book of her talks. So, we're transcribing some of her talks and editing them with her help. And we're going to make a book, and we'll have a Sason book, and that'll be really nice. So, I'm kind of doing the bulk of the editing and transcribing right now. If anyone wants to help be a part of that effort, it'll be very welcome and appreciated. But I was editing this one talk of hers the other day where she talks about it's not really a traditionally Buddhist thing to say, We kind of dance around it and talk about it a little bit, but I just really like the way she put it that, Buddhism, the main core of Buddhism is that life is suffering. There's a reason for that suffering, and there's a way to end or penetrate that suffering. And what Sason was saying is that we can look at it that there's two ends of suffering. Or another way to see it is that there's two sufferings and then two different ends to those sufferings. And again, this is pretty non-conventional, and I just think it might help us with the fallout of the election and just in general in our lives. And it kind of helps us understand Buddhism a little bit. But just kind of roll with me here. Two different sufferings, two different ends to suffering. The first is the suffering that comes from the basic notion of separation. Any separation at all. The minute we have the slightest notion of me or you or good or bad or yurt or bird or national city or Republican or Democrat, all these kind of dualistic things, the minute we establish any kind of dualism, then we're immediately slave to impermanence, immediately slave to changing, death, life. The minute we have even the slightest thought of life and death, then we're suffering. Because everything we love will go away and rot, and even this whole universe will be swallowed by a black hole, or whatever the scientists are saying. Everything goes away. There's a koan, or kind of like a Zen parable, that says, if you establish a single particle, the nation thrives. If you don't establish a single particle, the nation perishes. So without getting into that too much, the minute we even have the slightest notion of anything, then we live in this dualistic reality and we're just lost and caught up in life and death and suffering. And so the end to that suffering is to wake up to the total oneness, to penetrate and destroy that dualism. Destroy is not a great word, but to penetrate that dualism, right? Through, for us, meditation. Some people find it through prayer. Some people find it through exercise. Some people find it through art. I personally think that intensive Zen practice is the best way to really see that oneness, that emptiness. And so really coming into contact with that emptiness, then we see for ourselves that there is no me, there is no you, good, bad, life, death, Democrat, Republican. We really see how diluted all of those dualistic concepts are. So that's the one end to suffering. And then the other end to suffering is the suffering that comes out of the separations that we make, the harm that is caused, oppression, hunger, injustice, pain. And so the end to that suffering is to be of service, to knock on doors for the ideology you believe in, to start a homeless shelter, to start a food bank, to help your neighbor carry their groceries in because they have a bad back. And notice how these two different ends to suffering kind of contradict each other. On the one hand, you're saying, get out of conditions. Be independent and free of conditions. No matter what's happening, there's no good, there's no bad. There's no you, there's no me, there's no life, there's no death. Completely unconditional. And then in the other case, you're saying, well, this suffering is completely based on conditions. and I'm going to take action to change those conditions, right? On one hand, to change conditions is delusion because those conditions are empty. And on the other hand, we do whatever we can to change conditions so that people aren't suffering, to minimize harm. And so our practice is to personally and authentically reconcile those contradictions. On the one hand, there's no such thing as suffering, and you can wake up to that. And on the other hand, we see suffering all over the place, and we have to take action to assuage it. And this practice of zazen, this practice of not knowing, this practice of opening up to being wrong, all of that allows us to manifest both of those realities. And that's the vow of the bodhisattva, is to constantly be aware. How do I help people? By helping them to wake up to the oneness of everything, and help people by changing their circumstances. That's what a bodhisattva does, constantly looking at, do I help someone see the emptiness of their circumstance? Or do I give them a loaf of bread because they're hungry? Both are necessary. Do I help them see that their hunger is empty, or do I help them not be hungry anymore? And we're so conditioned in society and in our culture to just hang on to one side. And that's fine. That's a great life, to be of service to people and to try to change people's circumstances. But I just invite everyone to open up to the depth of adding that other end to suffering, where pain and suffering itself don't even exist. They're delusions. I know that's really hard to swallow. It doesn't make any sense. But just take a seat on the cushion and open up to it and see what it does for your life and the life of those around you. And yeah, thank you for joining us in this Bodhisattva vow to end sufferings. Thank you.